These days, there are quite a number of diesel crossovers out in the market today. There's the Honda CR-V and the Mazda CX-5 diesel. There's even the Kia Sportage. And perhaps you could owe it all to this one, the Hyundai Tucson. It was perhaps the first diesel crossover to hit the market about a decade ago. Now they've facelifted the current generation, and it now begs the question, is this one still worthy of your bank account? A facelift, you say? There's almost barely any difference, you might say. Well, the changes are primarily in the grille and right here in the corner fog lamps. So what's new with the grille? Well, it's now more of a Y shape and it follows the form of the Santa Fe. It also has different grille elements now, making it a bit bolder and actually appear wider. Also, you have these wider fog lights in each corner and a slightly different front apron. The hood is actually slightly different from before, forming a bit of this bulge right here that cuts right before the grille. Now, it's also worth mentioning that the headlights are slightly different from last year's models, having new elements in them. But anyway, the side. And if you're not finding any difference, well, there isn't any, save for these new set of alloy wheels, which now have a multi-spoke design. As for the back, well, there are new taillight elements in them, and slightly rearranged LEDs and all that. But really, all of the changes are relegated to the front, and they're actually just minor ones. Still, it's a good-looking design, and it actually hasn't dated that much, and it follows the current form of Hyundais that have been coming out lately. Still, what is it like on the inside? Now, if you stepped in last year's model and into this one, you might be in for a little bit of a surprise because everything you see here is new. Well, most of it at least. Now, from the driver's point of view, you have a new multi-information screen. And for the rest of it, there's a totally new dashboard. And finally, they installed a touchscreen standard on the Tucson because the old one had to make do with a 2-din stereo. Now, the touchscreen is actually pretty easy to use. And the free-floating form means it's actually pretty easy to reach. Now, as a result of putting it as a floating screen, they moved down the air conditioning vents and totally redesigned this bit of the dashboard. Storage space, well, cup holders appear kind of small, especially the one nearest the gear shifter, but at least there are 4 bottle holders inside. Now, interestingly, the Tucson still comes with cloth seats, but the driver has power adjustable seats. Now, it's certainly an interesting take on an interior. Perhaps leather gets a little too hot for some people, and these cloth seats are a nice option instead. What I don't like, however, is this faux carbon fiber trim, and I just wish they used a different sort of trim for it, sort of like a brushed aluminum look or gloss black. But gloss black, then again, would leave a lot of smudges and fingerprints all over the place. Now let's go check out the back. Now, here at the back, the Tucson space is actually pretty good, and some would even say rather generous. I have a fair amount of footroom, legroom, and knee room here at the back, which gives me a lot of wiggle space. Now, despite the sloping roofline, there's actually a lot of headroom too. And what I like about the rear of the Tucson is rear air conditioning vent, which comes in handy in a hot summer's day. Also, you get this armrest with built-in cup holders, and you can even recline the backrests. But what I don't like exactly about the Tucson is this high window line. Now, I feel like I'm 6 years old because I could barely see out of the window. If you were taller, perhaps it's all right, but if you're someone of my height, someone at 5'4", you're barely gonna see anything out. Still, if you want a bit of privacy, maybe that's the car for you. And because of these backrests, you can stretch out that little bit more. Of course, one of the reasons you'd even consider a crossover is for practicality, and the Tucson can actually deliver on that point. Now, granted, it doesn't exactly have the largest cargo area in its class, but it is very usable. It's a low, flat, and wide cargo bay, and this sill right here makes it easy for big items to be slid in and out of. Now, for extra privacy and to keep prying eyes away, you even have this cargo cover. Now, the Tucson isn't exactly the most generously equipped crossover out on the market today. Again, there's no leather seats, but I guess that's fine for some people, or nor does it have a power liftgate. Again, a feature some people could live without. But the Tucson seems to be missing HID headlights, and this is the model that's second to the top of the line all-wheel drive. And at that model range, you'd sort of expect it to come with those HIDs or LEDs already. And also, this is a 4x2 model and not even the all-wheel drive yet. If you want all the full bells and whistles, you have to go get that 4-wheel drive model, which is by indent order. Now, the Tucson isn't exactly the most generous when it comes to equipment, but what I think is what you're really paying for in the Tucson is the engine. Now, right now, we've been out on the highway for about 30 minutes now, and it's returning 18.8 kilometers per liter, and that is hugely impressive. And this is out on the highway, and in the city, it still manages almost 9 kilometers per liter at a middling pace of 14 kilometers per hour. The best part is, it also blends it with pretty good economy. We're doing about 80 kilometers per hour right now, but if I squeeze the throttle just a little bit, you can pick up the pace with ease just with a little tap. If anything, it's an excellent balance of performance and economy, and I say this is one of the major reasons you should consider a Tucson. Another reason why you should consider the Tucson is comfort. Now, granted, a highway is a relatively smooth piece of road, but in the city it soaks up bumps pretty well, and here in the highway, these excellent road manners make for a really good cruiser. Now, you won't feel tired after a long journey, be it when you're stuck in traffic or when you're out visiting from province to province. I say the Tucson is an excellent choice if you and your friends and family suddenly decide to go on a long road trip, because it has the range to bring you to the destination, the efficiency, and the performance to bring you up and down the highways. Now, that passing prowess on the highway isn't going to leave you shortchanged when the roads suddenly go upwards. Now, we're headed towards Subic right now, and in the uphill section, I'm barely having to put any throttle input on the pedal. And that's a good thing because you get to maintain a steady speed. Also, handling. Now, it's not the most dynamic car in its class. Again, the soft ride comes with a bit of a price. It's not exciting to drive or anything like that. Steering is actually a little bit light too. Although, for the everyman driver, they'll find this totally fine. It's not going to be difficult to drive. In fact, it's pretty easy to drive, and it's not going to shock you in any way, shape, or form. And if only I could demonstrate that this car also has automatic headlights as well. There's a fair bit of lean in the corners, but that is to be expected in a car like this. Now, it does have comfort in mind, so it's not going to be sporty in any way, shape, or form. Still, if it's comfort you value, then this perhaps is the crossover for you. Now, if only there's something they could do with that road noise, but I reckon it's not really the sound insulation of the car, but it's more of the rather hard eco-biased tires. Still, wind noise is pretty well suppressed, and you'll barely hear that diesel engine from in here. Of course, it's a different story outside, but what matters is you're driving it and it's pretty hushed here. All in all, the Hyundai Tucson can be summed up in 3 traits. It's comfortable, it offers good performance, and fantastic fuel economy. On the downside, however, you're limited to just 5 seats, and you don't really get an all-wheel drive model. I mean, the latter should be fine for some, but for others, they're probably looking for that extra drive. But perhaps the 1,835,000 pesos, some people are probably having second guesses if they should get this or a pickup platform vehicle. If you value comfort and fuel economy above everything else, then it's best to consider a crossover, especially if you don't really carry 7 people all the time. And the Hyundai Tucson, the diesel crossover that started it all, is still a very worthy option.